There are almost 2 billion Muslims living on Earth today. To outsiders, they often appear very much the same. They share one God, one holy Qur'an, and one final prophet. Yet for 1400 years, the Muslim community has followed two separate paths: Sunni and Shia. Sunnis form the overwhelming majority, making up around 90% of all Muslims. They are the dominant group in nations such as Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Turkey, and Indonesia. Their name comes from the word sunnah, which reflects their commitment to following the traditions of the Prophet and the agreement of his early companions. Shia Muslims represent approximately 10% of the global population. They form the majority in countries like Iran and Iraq. The term Shia means supporters or partisans of Ali. They hold that leadership after the Prophet should have remained strictly within his family, beginning with Ali as the divinely chosen successor. So beyond the political origins, how do their daily practices and beliefs actually differ? Here are the 5 key distinctions that still separate them in the modern world. The first and most noticeable difference appears in the way they perform their daily prayers. If you enter a mosque, you can frequently identify them simply by observing their standing position. During prayer, a Sunni Muslim usually folds his hands over his chest, with the right hand placed on top of the left. In contrast, a Shia Muslim typically keeps both arms straight down by his sides. They maintain this was the original way the Prophet prayed in the early period of Islam. Another visible distinction is in prostration. When Sunnis go into full prostration, they place their forehead directly on the prayer mat or the floor. Shia believers, however, prostrate onto a small piece of baked clay, often taken from the sacred ground of Karbala. Prayer timing also varies. Sunnis observe 5 separate prayers each day at their specific appointed times: Fajr, Duhur, Asr, Maghrib, and Isha. They generally perform each one in its own time frame and only combine them under exceptional circumstances such as travel or illness. Shia Muslims also recognize the same 5 obligatory prayers, yet they are allowed to combine them into 3 daily sessions. Even the call to prayer carries a distinct element. In the Shia Adhan, following a certain phrase, they include an additional line that Sunnis do not recite, inviting believers to come to the best of deeds. The second important difference concerns the sources they turn to for religious guidance and rulings. Sunnis base their understanding primarily on the Qur'an and the recorded traditions of the Prophet known as the Sunnah. Over centuries, this developed into 4 major schools of Islamic jurisprudence, or madhabs. These are named after the great scholars who established them more than 1,000 years ago. Sunnis regard all 4 schools as equally valid. A person can follow any one of them. They view religious authority as coming through scholarly learning rather than divine designation. While they greatly respect the early caliphs and companions, they do not consider them infallible. In Sunni belief, only prophets are protected from error. Shia Muslims follow a different approach. They believe the true understanding of the Quran comes only through the 12 imams from the Prophet's family. Today's Shia turn to a living religious scholar known as a marja, or source of emulation. Every Shia chooses a qualified senior scholar such as Ayatollah Sistani in Iraq or Ayatollah Khamenei in Iran, and follows his rulings closely through a practice called taqlid, or imitation. Unlike Sunnis who follow ancient schools, Shia rely on current scholars for guidance on modern issues. The third major difference is in their understanding of marriage. Both view marriage as a sacred bond, but they disagree on one specific type of contract. Sunni Islam sees marriage only as a lifelong commitment until death or divorce. For it to be valid, it requires the bride's guardian's consent, 2 male witnesses, and a public announcement. Sunnis strictly forbid any form of temporary marriage. Shia Islam fully accepts permanent marriage like Sunnis, but they also permit temporary marriage, known as muta. This is a formal agreement between a man and a woman for a fixed period of time, from hours to years. The The couple agrees on a marriage gift and duration. When the time ends, the marriage automatically dissolves without divorce. The fourth difference centers on Ashura, the 10th day of Muharram. For Sunnis, Ashura is a day of reverence and thankfulness. They fast on this day following the Prophet's example and remember how God saved Moses and the Israelites from Pharaoh. While they acknowledge the tragedy that befell the Prophet's grandson Hussein, they hold no organized mourning rituals. For Shia, Ashura is the most defining and emotional day of their faith. It marks the Battle of Karbala, where Imam Hussein and 72 of his family and companions were martyred by the army of the Umayyad Caliph Yazid. Shia see this as the ultimate sacrifice to protect true Islam. On this day they wear black, hold massive processions, weep, and beat their chests in grief and solidarity. They do not fast, viewing it as a day of profound tragedy rather than joy. The final major difference relates to pilgrimage. When it comes to the obligatory Hajj, Sunnis and Shia are completely united. Both perform the same rituals together in Mecca around the Kaaba. However, Shia also practice ziyarat, visiting the shrines of the Imams, especially Imam Hussein in Karbala and Imam Ali in Najaf. For them, these visits are deeply rewarding acts of devotion. Many Sunnis, especially those following stricter schools like Hanbali, reject this practice. They respect the Prophet's family, but believe grand shrines and praying at graves can lead to shirk. Sunnis emphasize that worship and prayer should go directly to God alone. To summarize, the 1400-year division comes down to several core issues. Sunnis emphasize community consensus and the caliphate, while Shia stress divine appointment through the imamate. On prayer, Sunnis fold their hands and pray on carpets, whereas Shia keep their arms at their sides and use clay tablets. Sunnis follow the 4 classical schools of law, but Shia look to living scholars. In marriage, Sunnis accept only permanent unions while Shia also allow temporary contracts. Sunnis honor the Prophet's companions while Shia place special focus on his family and the tragedy of Karbala. Despite these profound differences, the shared foundations are what truly matter. Both declare there is no God but Allah and Muhammad is his messenger. They read the same Qur'an, fast the same Ramadan, and pray facing the same direction. The Sunni-Shia split is not about 2 separate religions, but rather 2 different ways of understanding and practicing the very same faith. One path highlights the collective judgment of the community, while the other emphasizes the prophetic lineage. Assalamu Alaikum